Hi there, this is Jennifer and I'm glad you're here. Today I have a shorter video for you. Well, at least it's shorter than what I usually do, and it is all about using up scraps. I've done many videos in the past on using scraps as it's something that I really like to do. I have drawers full of scraps and I like to dive in once in a while and put them to good use. Today I'm showing you how to use your sentiment dies to create a fun background, and we'll step it up in a few different ways. Now for this, I'm using the Hero Arts Message Strips Stamp and Cut set. Now this is a stamp set and a die set that are sold together. I really like the sentiments in here. You can tell I've used it a lot, and I've shared it many times in videos. Well, today I'm using the dies that come with it. These are sentiment strip dies, and I'm going to use those to cut up my scraps into nice shapes that I can form a background. Now there are many sentiment strip die sets out there. Some stamp sets and coordinating die sets come with different sentiment strips, so use whatever you have. I'm arranging the ones from this set to be close together so I can put tape along the back. I find this to be a handy trick when I'm die cutting many small dies at once. This will hold them together as we do our die cutting. You can see the scraps that I chose are a bit larger, so I was able to tape them together and die cut all at once. This technique would be great with even the smallest scraps because you could die cut one sentiment strip at a time. If you don't have sentiment strip dies, stay tuned, I'll show you what you can do. Now I like to put a little anti-static powder tool on this. This powder will just remove some of the stick so that tape isn't too sticky through the process. For my die cutting, I'm using the new Hero Arts Compact Cutter machine. This is a small machine, lightweight, and easy to keep on your desktop. I've tried many of these over the years and they all work well, but this one has some features that I really like. First, it has suction cups on the bottom, so it will stick to your desk. I have a glass work surface and it sticks nicely to that. The machine also comes with 3 plates. You only need 2 for the die cutting, but there's a spare plate when your first one wears out, which I think is great, and they will be selling replacement plates in the future. These plates are also longer so that you're able to cut more as you go through with one pass. I find this feels a lot like the Cuttlebug, but in a smaller version. So it's really handy to have and has a better price point than the larger die cut machines. So you can see I'm die cutting lots of sentiment strips at once. This will just save me time and give me more pieces to create more backgrounds. However, if your scraps are smaller, you can just die cut one at a time and really make use of even the smallest scraps. One tip that I've shared before, but I think it's important to share again, is that I think it's best whenever you have dies with a straight edge to put them kind of at an angle on your plates. This will help to prevent warping of your plates and give a more precise cut. So you can see how those are kind of at an angle. Another thing that I recommend doing is not always cutting from the center of your plates. You'll notice this time I'm cutting down towards one end. The more you move your dies around on your plates, the less warping you'll have and the less wear you will have on the plates. All right, if you're looking, by the way, for more tips on taking care of your die cutting plates and extending their life, I'll link to a video up here on the top right. It even shows how to remove the warping. Okay, so that's how I like to cut my strips and make the most of my scraps. However, if you do not have sentiment strip dies like that, you can also cut your own using a trimmer, and it's really easy. So I have a piece of cardstock here, and I am using the lines on my trimmer background. These lines are 1/4 of an inch. So every time I move over one line and cut again, and this will give me even 1/4 inch strips. So you can create strips like this to form a background. You could even use smaller pieces of cardstock, I'm turning it here to do so, to make shorter strips. So this also works. One may be faster for you than the other, but I wanted to show you a difference you'll get in the background when you glue the 2 different types of strips down, the strips you die cut and the strips you cut with a trimmer. Now this may not matter to many people. I'm one of those who enjoys looking at the details and the differences. On the left here, I've glued down 3 strips that were die cut. So these were all die cut, and see how you can see the line between them? So you get a nice crisp line at the edge. The pieces over on the right here, those are 3 strips I cut with my trimmer. When I glue them down next to each other, they kind of blend together, so you don't see the line between. So with the die cut option, you kind of get a little ledge on the edge of your die cut, which really makes it stand out more. Totally doesn't matter. Up to you. I just like the look of the die cut strips better. All right, now we need to create our backgrounds. I'm using Altenew double-sided adhesive sheets. This is just a huge time saver, but you definitely could use whatever adhesive you want for this. And I'm cutting these to be slightly smaller than 4¼ by 5½ inches, which is the size card I'm doing today. I just find it easier to put this adhesive sheet on the piece if it's cut a bit smaller. So these are white cardstock pieces, 4¼ by 5½ inches, and I am sticking the double-sided tape onto it. I also like to use a bone folder to really press it down. You could also just cover the background with tape runner if you prefer, or glue down each strip with liquid adhesive, but you'll see that it's really handy to have a double-sided adhesive like this for this technique. All right, so I'm peeling up the corner and I'll fold the release paper back. I'm not going to remove it completely so that I have a place to hold onto this as I'm creating. I decided to put down my strips at an angle. There are 2 reasons I put them at an angle. First is because I don't have to worry about keeping them straight as I go. If I start at the top and work my way down, I may end up going a little crooked towards the bottom. The other reason is I think that it's fun to have angles on your card. I think it just offers a nice look. So it's just a personal opinion. I like to start in the middle. I'm doing a rainbow and I have green kind of at the middle of my rainbow. So that's why I'm using green right there at the middle. And then I will work my way up towards pink at the top and my way down to purple on the bottom. And I'm putting these together randomly, just trying to push them together as close as possible. You can even use the leftovers hanging off the bottom. You can tear and cut those and put them in another place. I am not following a pattern. You could do like a brickwork pattern if you wanted to, but I think it's fun to really mix it up. And I'm trying to do a blended rainbow, and so I kind of mix the different colors when I change from, one color to another. Really, you can't go wrong here. It'll all look great in the end. So I continued to do this to cover up that top left corner, and then I will rotate my piece around and work my way to the other corner, and I'll end up with a rainbow in the end. Once I'm done, I can flip it over and cut off all the excess pieces and save those because I can use those on my other backgrounds. Even the smallest pieces work on the edge. So I created a bunch of backgrounds using these sentiment strip die cuts. And it really doesn't take long to do. And the more colors you use, I think the better because it makes the background more colorful. So really dig through your scraps and put them all to use. This one I did pink, orange, and yellow. Now, remember that sentiment strip die set also had this larger rectangle die? I thought I'd use those together on a card to kind of create a brick-looking background, but I didn't line them up like brickwork. I did it randomly once again. This time, I'm starting with pink at the top and working my way down to yellow at the bottom. Another fun version you could do of this is to have some pattern paper scraps and have some of the rectangles be pattern paper, or maybe even little pieces of inky background that you created on other projects. So you could throw in those little bit of patterns if you want to. So here are all the backgrounds I created. I even have more pieces that I can go back and create with later. I just ran out of time today. Now these are all 4¼ by 5½ inches. I do find it handy to just trim this down a tiny bit, maybe 1/8 of an inch off each edge. It just makes it layer better on the card, but you could leave it as is if you want to. Okay, now I'm using liquid adhesive to add these background panels onto a 4¼ by 5½ inch white note card. You'll see there's a little trim and maybe some edges where I didn't put little color scraps. That's okay. We're going to cover that up with the die cut that we put on top. All right, now I thought I'd step up some of the backgrounds and add some interest to them. For a couple of the backgrounds, I'm using this great cloud background from Hero Arts. I think it is such a cool effect and very unique. So I have my MISTI stamping tool, and here I have a MISTI sticky mat. Any kind of sticky mat is really handy with your MISTI. I'm placing one of my cards onto that sticky mat, and that will hold it in place as we do our stamping. I will then place the cloud stamp on top of it. Now you could do a variety of things here. You could heat emboss, you could stamp with white pigment ink. It's up to you. For this example, I thought I would stamp with a darker color than the cardstock. So towards the top here, I'm doing a darker purple. Then I will come in with a darker blue and ink up that section of the stamp and stamp that too. Now you'll notice I'm not really inking it up perfect each time, that's okay. I'm kind of overlapping these inks and stamping multiple times, which will give a nice blended look. So my my stamping will blend from purple at the top to green at the bottom. So I used a purple, a blue, a teal, and a green. And I just think that adds a lot of interest, and I love that cloud pattern. Now I thought I'd do the cloud pattern again with another card. This time I'm cleaning off my stamp really well, and I'm stamping with white pigment ink. This is also a great subtle way to step up these colorful backgrounds. If you stamp with white pigment ink, I do recommend stamping a couple times just to make the white more crisp. And I love that. I love that it looks like it glows. All right, another way you can step up these backgrounds is to stamp sentiments on them. After all, we use sentiment strip dies to cut these pieces, so I have sentiments that fit in them nicely. And this is from that same message strip stamp and die set that I showed you at the beginning of the video. So I'm lining up 2 at a time here on the green so that I can stamp them both in green at the same time. So I chose to do a monochromatic here. Whatever color strip I'm stamping on is the color ink that I'm using, just in a slightly darker shade. If you wanted to step this card up even more, you could stamp a sentiment on each of the strips, but I decided to save the time since I'm making multiple cards and just stamp on different sentiment strips scattered along the background. Okay, so after I've done all of that stamping on the different backgrounds, I'll show you them all in a moment, it's time to add a die cut overlay. Now you could really use a lot of different dies for this, but I think background dies that have some wide open spaces work best. This Hero Arts die won my heart. I think it's such an adorable scene. And I also like that you can cut off the dies. There's 2 dies here, so that you cannot cut the outline if you don't want to. So you could cut the window scene from the center of a bigger card. I like having that option. Well, I kept the 2 dies together to cut a bunch of white backgrounds. So this cuts an outside edge of 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, so it'll cover our entire card to the edge. I'm using liquid adhesive to glue together 3 die cuts. I really like that stacked dimensional look, but you could definitely use just 1 die cut if you prefer. You could even use other colors of cardstock, but I really think this white pops against all those colorful scraps. I then glued those on top of our colorful backgrounds and put something heavy on it while it dries. Now to finish off all of the cards, I did a variety of sentiments. Here we have 3 die sets from Hero Arts that I really like. The first is the peace word set, the middle is the friend words, and the right is the celebrate words. And I just like the basic size of this. I also like the simple style. It works with a lot of different styles of cards. I'll be using the 2 sets on the left for my cards today. So off screen, I glued all of these cards together, just did some die cutting and some gluing and a bit of stamping. And I ended up with, I think, 6 cards here, but lots of pieces for later. Now this first one, I have that monochromatic stamping of sentiments in the background. And then I added a black hugs die cut along with the sending a happy hello sentiment along the bottom. Now you could add some little sequins for sparkle, but I really wanted the colorful background to stand out and kind of be the focal point of the card. Now in this one, I decided to stamp the sentiments in the background with black ink so they would stand out more. So that's another option. If you want those sentiments to stand out, you could do the black ink instead of the monochromatic ink, which I did over on the right. And here I did the sending a happy hello along the bottom, which is one of my favorite sentiments. Here I used the hello die cut and then stamped thinking of you underneath it on that tree. And we have our monochromatic sentiment stamping on the background. Now I ended up really liking the white stamping on the background. I felt like that really popped. And so next time I plan to do the sentiment strips with the stamped sentiments in white ink in the background. I think that'll be a fun option too. For my last 2 cards, I use this Hello Friend sentiment. Now, this stamp set has 3 great sentiments in this unique style, and I've been wanting to use them. And thankfully, the Hello Friend fit nicely on that little tree area. So I used it on this card with the blue and purple backgrounds, and on the other one where we did kind of the brick background with the cloud stamping on top. So I hope that this inspires you to break out your scraps, even the smallest ones, and die cut different shapes from them, glue them together to create a colorful background. Now, I wanted to mention also that this post is part of an asthma awareness Instagram hop. So I'll put a link below to Instagram where you can follow along in the hop, and there are many prizes. And it's an important topic, so I encourage you to check that out. If you're interested in the supplies I used, they are linked below in my YouTube description to multiple sources. And here at the end, I will link to a couple other related videos in hopes that they inspire you too. Have a wonderful day. See you soon. Take care.